Hello, welcome
Hello.
back. We are here. I'm so excited. Sofia Bella Rosa, thank you for joining us. It's Bella Roma.
Yep. A
Sofia
lot of
Bella
people
Roma.
say Bella Rosa, and I think it's because the character in the book is Rose.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that I was like, wait. So I'm excited to get a chance to talk with you because we have a lot of similarities as far as background, but not even just the educational background, but just being moms and wanting to be able to put our best foot forward and do great things. And so I'm excited that we were able to connect. And Sofia Bella Roma is here to share about Mother Knows Worst, her debut book. So I'm not gonna say too much. I'm gonna ask some questions. I want to kind of get into the nitty gritty. But thank you for coming on and say hello to everyone out there in the world.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Jillian. I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful opportunity to be talking with you. So thank you.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna share with everyone just a little bit about your story, and I'd love for you to kind of give us your take on things because Sofia is a mom first. That's the most important job to her. She's an attorney out in North Carolina. Funny enough, and we'll talk a little bit about this. She's a divorce attorney. It actually in an area that I'm really interested in looking at for personal, for maybe moving my family and also in business. So, but this is really exciting because her book, I have this tendency to read books like halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, and her book I read all the way through. So this is a big deal. So the book is Mother Knows Worst, and it tackles problems with relationships, and I'll let you kind of touch on that if you can. What made you decide to write this book? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you decide to write this book.
So obviously I feel like all writers, it says on there based on true story, and people sometimes like, I don't want to read something based on a true story, but I feel like all writers use people we encounter, right? And so this book has a lot of characters in it that that were part of my life. And so that's why I chose to write the book. And because I deal with family law, often, I think this journey takes people through a marriage, through meeting somebody, marriage and the difficulties. And then you add these two different cultures that collide together and how that affects a marriage and the challenges and the wonder and all of it. It all comes into play.
Yeah, it's really a valuable story for people to read because I found myself as I was reading through, I was like, there's some red flags here. I saw some pieces that I was like, ooh, yeah, I could see that becoming an issue later, right? So do you see those things in your practice, in the law practice where people are like, yeah, this situation came up? Do you see those things? How do you address them?
Absolutely. So in the practice of law, I think that, when you're going through divorce, you can almost catalog the different scenarios. You got people who get divorced because there's an affair. You have people who get divorced because of substance abuse issues, mental health issues. And, they just kind of line up and some of them intermingle. And then you do have people who get divorced because of family members and, and in-law problems. And that can, all of those things can really tear into relationships. So you do see it a lot in the practice of law, but of course, every story is unique and the way the people handle it is also unique. You have some people who come into my office and say, hey, listen, we've got it all worked out. We just need an agreement. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We'll just knock out an agreement. And then you have some people who come in and they're like, this is going to be horrible. And this is why. And you're like, oh this is gonna be pretty bad. And you kind of can see it. You try to make it as easy on people as possible because it is the ending of a chapter in their life, and doesn't matter what chapter in your life is ending, it's always a challenge, and it can be difficult and emotional.
Yeah.
Sure.
No matter what, it's tied to so many emotions, of what our mindset is, when our expectations and our mindset of what we bring into a relationship, what it's supposed to be like. And then there may be disappointment. There's joy. There's something that you said that was just one quick little mention in the book that I had to close the book and stop for a little while. You said, love is an illusion. And I thought, I want her to explain that more. Right. So tell me what you meant with that. Like, elaborate on it, because I think there's a lot to it. I think we can perceive love as many things.
Right. And so I think one of the things that I think came out of this was that love sometimes just isn't enough. Right. It's just not enough. And you can love somebody and that's not going to be enough. And it is an illusion. It is something that, and I don't mean that in like, oh, you can't fall in love and be happy with somebody.
Yeah.
That's not what I meant at all when I wrote that in the book. But I do think that sometimes we project what we think the situation is onto it, and it's not that in reality. And we create what we put on somebody else, these feelings, and that's not necessarily how they're feeling.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that, from a parent to a child, there's absolute unconditional love, right? I think in relationships it's different. I think even, I've seen, like, I've had some family members go through some pretty heinous divorces. And the idea that piece of love is an illusion really stuck with me, because I found that you can turn something into love that may not have been that initially. And then, and depending on how long that goes, how it affects your situation and the relationship that you have with that person. But it's interesting because we're not able to generally connect those dots forward. We only seem to be able to connect them backward.
Which is the stink of it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know, because you think, well, if I could have just like gone into this knowing what I know now, things would have been different. And I think one of the things that, isn't in the book is that that character, Rose, needed to take more onus of her part in that marriage, right? Because she didn't set the boundaries.
Right.
She did not set those boundaries, and she didn't set those expectations. And so how do you expect anybody to know to meet them if you don't set them? I think it's unrealistic. And so as much as the story's antagonist is Amita, you really have to look at Rose's part in all of this, because she didn't draw the line early enough, and she did miss those signs. She put on it what she wanted on the relationship.
And I think when she got to the point where she wanted to say something, she was already super angry. She was already at the point where she was like, what is wrong? And so, when you're in that kind of state, you're not able to articulate it calmly and let people know, this is how I feel. How do you feel? It just doesn't work that way.
And it doesn't. It only hurts the marriage if you can't communicate. And so if you're pushing everything down and you're trying to please everybody, it's just bubbling resentment. And and so I think that Rose could have, obviously, those were her issues.
Yeah. And I think I might know, but which was the hardest character for you to flesh out and write?
I think for me, it was Anil. I didn't want people to hate that character. Like, wanted the heart there, because, you know, it's from Rose's perspective of her marriage, right? And so you don't want to demonize Anil because he's not a demon. He has been through his own personal trauma. So and so for me, it was very hard. I didn't want people to be like, that brat bastard, but I wanted people to be like, well, wait a minute, Rose could have said this to him too, right? And just sort of give him that life. I think that was the hardest part.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Character, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I won't give away the ending. But I felt like, especially when you're dealing with the balance of two different cultures coming together, it felt like there was more of a focus on tradition than there was on what either of you wanted.
That's right.
I mean, what either Rosa or Anil wanted in the situation. And so, you know, how do you feel like couples going forward? I was actually going to say you should add like premarital counseling for family law to your repertoire, to your book of business, because I think it would be so valuable. But how do you think couples can address these cultural differences up front when they're, you know,
right? And I it's really a good point that you bring out, Jillian, because that I think is one of the biggest takeaways I hope people get from the book is addressing that issue within different cultures. You know, it's so you should always honor both cultures, right? I think the mistake that Rose and Anil made was not taking the best from this culture, and then creating their own traditions, their own uniqueness, and bring their own uniqueness. And that would have honored both those cultures instead of having this struggle, which was, I'm going to do it this way. Well, I'm going to do it this way. And then you're pulling apart. If you just take those two beautiful cultures and put them together and say, hey, this could be great. Let's try it this way. This could be fun. And this could be a new tradition in our family. I think that would have been the better way to go about it.
Oh, it makes so much sense. And you know, like I said, hindsight's 2020. You can really look back and be like, could have done this, could have done that. Ooh, that could have made some different choices, conversations. Amita made an interesting point as you guys were planning, you know, as Rose and Anil were planning the wedding, or even dating, I think in the beginning, about American women being manipulators. Let's talk about that, because I felt like when I stood back, I was like, but it kind of felt like a lot of that manipulation was coming from her, you know what I mean, from that side. So what did you think about that when she said that? And I know that some of these things you didn't hear until later, right? And Rose did not hear about some of these things that were going on until later. But what do you think about that statement? So,
you know, and I think it's that projecting on to other people, right? So if you're, it's almost gaslighting, you know? And so I'm going to project who I am onto you.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what Amita was doing in that. She was projecting a lot of her fears, right? This fear of losing control. I think that was probably one of the biggest fears for her, right? Is losing this sense of control, this sense of, I've got it. I've got this family. I've got it all together. And I'm going to hold on to this the way I want to hold on to it. And I think, again, another illusion is control.
Absolutely.
You never have control.
And, you know, I don't know if that's just cultural, or if it's just women in general. I feel like somehow, my husband tells me, I need an insane amount of control in situations.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's security too. If you're maintaining control, then you feel like, oh, I've got this and I'm secure. But it's an illusion. You never really have control.
Yeah. you can't control what happens to you. You only can control how you deal with it.
Right. That's right.
It's, I don't know. So how was your feedback on the book? I mean, what was maybe the toughest response you received?
So the toughest thing was somebody had written about Rose, and it was a specific scene in the book. I can't remember the scene, but she was like, I just wanted to smack her. And I was like, oh, that was real.
That really happened.
That really happened. That was me. You wanted to smack me. And I was like, oh no. And so, and then one of my best friends, she held up my book and she was like, she wanted to smack you. Now you know how we felt. And I was like, oh, this is harsh, but yeah. I mean, when you put yourself out there, that can happen. You hear what people really think about you and what you were doing. And so in some of those situations that were, like I said, it's based on a true story, but some of them aren't real. But the ones that were, if somebody comments on it, you're like, go. And it's like, and so that was a little rough.
I think it's hard. I think sometimes we can lose ourselves, not just in areas of love, like we can lose ourselves in certain things and not be able to see the forest through the trees.
Right.
Whereas other people standing on the sideline are thinking, what is happening? Why are you doing this? And, and Rose had feedback like that along the way. We know that this is not necessarily the best, but we're going to do what works for you because we want you to be happy. We love you,
Exactly.
So, wow. It seemed like a lot of the things that were being shared with that you were maybe guilty of or could be guilty of were actually kind of being done to you. So it's really interesting. So if you could change something about writing the novel, what would it be?
I think one of my biggest fears writing the novel was obviously the players who it was based on, right?
Yeah.
And I never wanted to hurt anybody. And I wish the people that it was based on, I would have told prior to the book coming out.
Okay.
Because it did hurt them. And it has become painful for me more than joy.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't my intent.
Yeah. I mean, was your intent more to just like a catharsis, being able to get it out? And
it was to heal. It was to heal and just get it all on paper. It ended up being a book that wasn't necessarily the intent. So, and going through that, it was really healing for me, and it allowed me to forgive everything that had truly happened. And so then it was sort of when the tables turned and I wasn't forgiven for writing it. It's a little painful.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
But I wish I would have done a better job.
Well, you changed the names to protect the innocent. So.
I did.
So I'm curious, are there more novels on the horizon?
Yeah. So my next one, I think, I've got a few that I'm sort of juggling through, but I'm not sure which one. It might be the prequel to this or Neil's story.
Okay.
Inside of the story.
Okay. I like that. How did having little Enzo change the entire experience?
Can you tell I light up? He's
yeah, absolutely. It's fantastic.
So I think Enzo is what holds everything together, for sure. Yeah. And I think with Enzo, compassion your child comes first. That is it. And so, when you're going through a divorce and you have a child, it all of a sudden things that might have been important if you didn't have a young child, or you're in a relationship that's traumatic and you don't have this young child, can be amplified. Whereas I think Enzo is the glue, because Rose was doing everything for Enzo. It was all about Enzo.
Yeah. There was a big shift in the book once he was born. You know what I mean? I could really sense it. So, you know, I admire you because I think I told you I have many ideas for books, many that I'd like to be able to do. So I appreciate how vulnerable you are in this book and what courage it takes to really share your story on a really honest level and to be able to make an impact. You know, how do you feel like the book, writing the book, has changed you? Maybe your approach to your practice, or you know how you look at life now. Has it shifted?
It definitely has shifted. It definitely has. You know, I think the biggest thing is just the learning curve for me with my son.
Yeah.
And the way I speak to my child is, I think, one of the biggest things, biggest learning lessons that's come out of this is that I tell my child, please speak your truth to me. If you're upset with something I do, you are allowed to tell me that. What you're not allowed to do is be disrespectful about it. You can absolutely say, Mom, the way you did this, I didn't like it and it hurt my feelings because. And we should have those conversations, because I also think we need to raise our children to be able to express themselves, and especially like having a little boy, right? And he's going to grow up and get married. I want him to be able to express it in a healthy, his feelings in a healthy, whole way.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest. I set boundaries now. I'm not afraid to be the bad guy out of the gate.
Yeah.
I do it kindly, but I set them. You know, sorry, this isn't going to work for me. That's just the way it is, and so that time I'm learning how to say no.
That is a lesson that many people need,
Yeah,
including myself. You know, especially parenting. I think I was telling my mom the other day. I said, you know, sometimes I feel like parenting is choosing between. These are the words I use. I said, what suck and suckier, basically.
It's true.
There's no winning sometimes as a parent, you know, and starting to make those choices, or you know, you start thinking about, okay, if I say yes to this, what is it going to lead to? What precedent is it going to set? But if I say no, am I going to be harassed for saying no for however long? So our Rose and Anil are co-parenting, right? And how is Enzo adjusting? I'm just curious. I really want to know, like, given the situation, you know, it's gotta have an effect.
Right. So Rose and Anil, I think would probably be in the next book is what I would talk about, but they end up doing a very nice job with Enzo. Enzo's well adjusted. I think part of that is, you know, you've got to bring in professionals. So, you know, counselors and people who can guide you with your child. And that's one of the reasons why Rose was set in a therapist chair.
Yeah.
Right. Because I do think as a lawyer, I'm there for my client when they've made the decision to leave. But if you know, prior to that, you need somebody to help you if you don't know whether or not you want to leave. So you need somebody who can kind of take you through that process. And so I think kids also need somebody to speak to when they're going through that process, and somebody who can, a professional who's good at that craft, working with children, can help guide and steer that. And now, you know, I parent very differently than most people. So my son is very fortunate in that he can say to me, hey, Mom, you know, don't be upset, but would you mind if I spent the night with Dad? I just really feel like hanging out with him tonight. And I'll be like, no, that's fine. And he goes, and I drive him over there. Unless it's like 10 o'clock at night and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, please. Can we do this another time?
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's amazing. I think that it really, I know the lines have to be blurred between family law attorney and therapist sometimes, where I'm sure you feel that, you know, yes, that's not your craft necessarily, but I think it kind of creeps its way into your practice. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I mean, people are at their most vulnerable, some of the toughest times of their life.
Yeah.
Some really bad things could have happened to them. Um, and so, they do depend on you to be their sounding board and their guide and their counselor. And I think that's absolutely true. But it's difficult because I can't really give them what they need that they could get from a
Yeah.
counselor.
Yeah.
That's not I haven't been trained in that area. I can be compassionate, sure. I've seen a lot of divorces in my time. I've been through a divorce, but I can't give you the tools for what you will need like a therapist can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's I like I said earlier, I admire you because you're paving the way for people that are to come behind you, to make a situation that was tough and painful and turn it into something that can benefit other people, and you're doing that for culture, like you said, colliding of cultures,
Mhm.
right? But also for relationships, because it sometimes feels like, relationships are an incredibly natural part of life, but it feels like we're rushing them. Sometimes we're like trying to fit them into
A box.
a box, a size 5 shoe, and you wear an 8, um
And I think part of it for me, what I see and what I learned from this book is that a lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people who come to my office, and me particularly, well, society tells us we have to be married, right? We have to do it this way.
mhm,
And it has to be, cookie cutter this way. And I think what I'm really excited about moving forward is it doesn't have to be that way.
mhm,
And as a matter of fact, people who have done different versions of what they think family should be, whether they're married or not married, or whether they wait till they're older, or, is that they're happier,
mhm.
right? Because they're doing, again, it's like taking those two cultures and making what works for you.
Yeah.
Because um, when you get married young, you grow and you change, and a lot of times your partner does not. And I've seen that a lot. And then people are trying to fit this marriage into what they think society wants,
Mhm.
and I think that's difficult.
Yeah,
And I
what it should look like from the outside.
Mhm.
I find, my husband and I have been married for, in August, it'll be 18 years, which
Mhm.
is every
Amazing.
every year I'm like,
Congratulations.
wow, amazing. It's a long time.
That's good. Congratulations.
But we were very close friends beforehand.
That's
Uh,
important.
we were friends for a year, engaged for a year, friends for a year, dated for a year, engaged for a year, married for almost 18. And it is still very hard.
Sure.
It is very hard. There are a lot of things that are expectations. We decided early on that we were going to have an egalitarian relationship. I heard that in women's studies, so I decided I really liked that word.
That word. It's a great word.
So I loved it. I loved it. And so I said, that's how our relationship needs to be. There's no, gender roles. Like, I'll take out the trash, or you do the dishes, or,
Right.
you can whatever. But it's still really hard. But there are still expectations, not that we necessarily place on each other, but what the outside world and society expects of us,
Right.
you know?
That's right.
And what you'll find, or at least in my relationship, what I have found is that if I want it to get done, oftentimes I'll just do it,
Right.
because otherwise it won't get done,
Right.
you know? Um, but like I said, I appreciate you so much. And I want to ask you a couple of fun questions here, kind of my like this or that piece. But I'm going to save this to the end, but I really appreciate what you've done to be able to create a path to follow for many people out there. going through
you
the
so
same
much.
kind of situation that you're in. So
I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
absolutely. So okay, so this or that. These are silly, but they will tell us a little bit about you. So playlist or podcast?
Oh, playlist.
Playlist. Okay. Text or call?
Call.
Okay. Rustic or modern?
Modern.
Okay. Drama or fantasy?
Fantasy.
Okay. Swimming pool or beach?
Beach.
Okay. I like that one. Flats or heels?
Heels. Oh, I love heels.
Too much sleep? Too little sleep?
Definitely would love too much sleep. Always get too little sleep.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what mom out there gets too much sleep. It doesn't exist. Oh, last one. Introvert or extrovert?
I'm actually an introvert.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you?
I would love to be an extrovert. But yeah, I'm always like second guessing what I say.
Mm-hmm. I'm an introvert. I guess I'm a recovering introvert. I've had to become an extrovert, train myself to become an extrovert, but nobody ever believes that I'm an introvert. I actually really appreciate the quiet, and I think over time you have to adapt.
Right. And I think when I was thinking playlist or podcast, I was like, being on a podcast makes me so nervous because I got to be myself.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, I just would rather, be on some sort of.
Yeah. But I found myself when I'm working out or I'm, different activities, it depends on my mood.
Right.
Sometimes I may want to listen to a podcast, but I think a playlist is easy.
Right, it is easy. I definitely don't want to come across my podcast and hear me.
It's the hardest thing. I was telling a friend of mine, I was trying to pull social media clips and listening to my audio and going over and over it to find little pieces that would be valuable. And it was the most painful process ever.
Yeah.
Because watching myself, I never watch my videos ever. I'm like, oh, that's nice. Just put it away.
Exactly.
But it's helpful. And I think even as you grow as an author and start to, your practice of law, but also your practice as an author, you'll find that you have to do things that are so uncomfortable.
Right.
even more as you're, branding and marketing yourself. It's a journey.
It is for sure.
So I think, do you have any questions for me? I don't, like I said, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but I loved it. I really loved it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. What was your favorite part?
It's funny. It was actually towards the end, and it gave me a realization. When Anil's brother was getting married, and Rose was telling the story of what was going on that day and how things were different from Rose's wedding, right? And I realized how perspective can be so different, because with Rose's wedding, as frustrated as she was, there was a lot of effort made to make her happy. Right. With the control, with all that stuff.
Right.
But I noticed a sharp difference as she was writing about the difference between his brother's wedding.
Interesting.
And so it stuck out to me. First, it was Love is an Illusion. That was the first thing that I was like, ooh, wow, that's pretty deep. And then that part, after reading the whole story, I thought to myself, they were making a lot of effort to make Rose feel happy, but you didn't always see that. And I didn't know, obviously there was a lot going on at that same time, but it really made me think, you never truly know what's going on with other people in their minds unless you have those conversations, like you were talking about, setting those boundaries. And I just realized it never is what everything that we think is going on is not necessarily the truth,
That's right.
Yeah. So it was an excellent book, and it was definitely eye-opening. I read it pretty fast. It didn't take me as long as I thought. But I love
it's like a beach read.
Yeah, it was good though. I mean, it was a story. It moved pretty quickly. It was a really easy read, but there was a lot of pieces of it that I could imagine myself there watching it happen.
Right.
You know, and imagining myself being one of her friends saying, "Okay, this is what you want to do. This is fine. This is fine." So, but it's a wonderful story, and I think that the piece of having the therapist like speaking what was happening to Rose's therapist, I think it helped because she was able to give some insight that Rose couldn't necessarily see with all of the things that were going on, all of the tit for tat kind of things that were happening. It was better to have her perspective so that you could kind of take a step back and go, oh yeah, maybe that was what was going on. It was excellent. It was excellent. So, but more than anything, I appreciate how real you are.
Oh, thank you.
And how you were able to really capture the essence of all of the players. And it takes a lot of courage to be someone who's willing to stand up and tell the story, tell the painful story, set yourself up to take some of the daggers, if you will, right? Some of the hurt for the benefit of others. And not everybody is willing to do that. So, and you've inspired me to get my act together and to my writing.
Write it for sure. You need to write it.
Yeah, I so appreciate you. So, what I will do is I will make sure we have all of your sites posted, your Instagram, your Facebook, and let everybody know, if you will, where can they find you? Where can they get the book? I will post all this information, but please tell everyone you can.
Sure. It's Mother Knows Worst by Sofia Bella Roma. And you can find that on my website, which is sofiabellaroma.com, or you can also go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. I think Walmart, Target has it as well. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. And are you doing any, I know you've done some events out in North Carolina. Will you be doing any more promotions?
I probably will be. And you can look on my website and I'll have those when I do them. But yeah, they're fun. I do like meeting people and getting out there. So it's a lot of fun.
Yes. I'll come get my copy signed.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I'll probably be out there pretty soon. So I'll keep you posted.
Absolutely. I would love to meet you.
Okay. All right. Well, Sofia, so thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate your story and how much value that you're bringing into the world, and, taking something that's painful, but turning it into something that can be a benefit for others.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Be inspired, everyone. Be inspired for a great life. Take care.